Yo, I'm Bob. Totally blind since birth. Into Marvel. Going to be talking about X-Men episodes 5 and 6. Captive Hearts and Cold Vengeance. So Captive Hearts premiered on January 30th in 1993, and Cold Vengeance premiered on February 6th in 1993. I love the recap before Captive Hearts begins. There's a lot of chaos going on, and of course, we know that Callisto was watching some of this chaos later on in the episode. That's a bit creepy, but we'll get into that. I forgot to mention in the previous video that for the longest time I had no idea that this incarnation of Magneto wore armor. I did own a Super Spark Magneto action figure when I was a kid. Had no idea that guy had armor. I guess it's more pronounced on some action figures than others. I'm wondering if Magneto wore a light breastplate. I am very familiar with that unique helmet of his. So I like the Danger Room training sequence as the episode begins. We get to see tentacles going around, wall blasters. The tentacles remind me of Wolverine's Combat Cave, a little playset that you could buy to go with your action figures in the 90s. There was a little octopus in that playset, and there were tentacles coming off of that. I think these were probably just coming out of the walls, though. It reminds me quite a bit of Brainiac's ship from DC, with the tentacles just flailing around. Storm has to deal with her claustrophobia as the walls begin to close in, but before that, I like how Xavier is reminding the X-Men of how crucial the training is. He reminds them of what happened to Morph and how they all need to depend on each other. And when he talks about Morph, I like those somber chimes that are going in the background there. I like seeing Jean and Storm. They're both really getting their hands dirty in this episode. Gooey in some instances, as we'll see later on. And Rogue is, of course, front and center as well here. I love these characters quite a bit in this episode. So when the walls start to close in, I like how Storm is... I mean, she is a very strong character, but here she's having a panic attack, and that's going to come into play later in the episode. But I like how, Professor Xavier, he is lenient with her. I mean, everyone has things that they have to work through, and everyone is supportive of what she's going through. And I like how these guys are just a big family. And Wolverine, though, he doesn't really feel as if he's family in this episode. He is very much going through a lot. I think this is the first episode in which I realized that he has a thing for Jean. I don't know if we really see that in Night of the Sentinels very much. So this was news to me when I saw it as a kid. So he's recovering from his fight with Sabretooth. Not really enjoying unrequited love, poor Logan. Cyclops doesn't seem like a very fun guy to be around. I mean, Jean is very patient with him, but Psyche is definitely thinking about the X-Men. Oh, being an X-Men is the most important thing in the world to me and all that. And she's trying to get him to come back down to Earth. But I feel like if Cyclops isn't on the job, if he's not trying to solve some problem, he feels like his head is going to explode. Got a lot of anxiety in you, buddy. Got a lot of stress in you. And Jean is trying to help him have some fun. The Morlocks in this episode, I really like these characters. They're a really fun group of mutants. When I was a kid, I didn't know that Dark Beast had a hand in creating them. I would have loved to have seen some of these characters in the shadows in this episode. Of course, Dark Beast, he wasn't really featured in the show, but it would have been interesting to possibly get some inkling of Mr. Sinister in the episode. The Morlocks are pretty much doing their own thing here. I love the subway battle. That was interesting. We get to see characters like Leech. We get to see Sunder. I think the goo guy, what's his name, Tar Baby, I think he's here as well. Or does he show up later in the tunnels? I've seen the episode quite a few times. You'd think I'd know that. No audio description, though, for these older shows. So I'm constantly having to peruse the wikis and read what I've missed or get that described to me by other fans of the series. When Cyclops and Jean all fall asleep along with the crowd, and they get to the Morlock tunnels. It's an interesting scene when Callisto reveals that she's been watching Cyclops via monitors. And I'm like, lady, how and when did you install the cameras? What in the world did you do here? She is very much wanting an heir. And I love Sue Roman's voice for Callisto in this episode. It's one of my favorites. I wish Callisto had been in more episodes. She's just a very powerful yet very unsettling character here, and she's not willing to take no for an answer. I like how Psyche tells her to take out an ad and that he's not interested, and he's wanting to be with Jean. All the while she's been stroking his face. I laughed my head off at this scene when I was a kid. You know, even when you're 10, you know what an heir is. So I'm like, oh, she really wants this guy, apparently. So you've got the X-Men attempting to find Scott and Jean. I love Gambit and Rogue. I'm glad that they're together in this episode. I think they were in bathing suits earlier on in the episode. That was an interesting scene there. I guess they were going to hit the pool. I guess the X-Mansion might have a pool. When they get to the Morlock tunnels, Storm is having to once again face her claustrophobia, but she manages to keep that in check as they're having to crawl through those tunnels, and she fares very well. Once they exit those very tight spaces there, it's a really cool battle that we get with the Morlocks. I like seeing Tar Baby throwing all that goo around. Anna Lee is apparently rewarded for making that crowd of people fall asleep earlier in the episode. And Jean apparently thinks that she's Anna Lee's daughter. She's calling Anna Lee mommy. So, you know, creepy lady is getting her reward, I guess, raising an adult little girl. This character, Anna Lee, she really enjoys climbing inside the heads of other mutants. Once she tries to do that to Wolverine in the episode, and she tells him that he's apparently covered with scorpions. Oh, covered with scorpions. It sounds like a dance mix if you listen to that line looped enough, because it is a looped line. And I always thought it would make a great techno dance mix at some kind of club or another. If you kind of put that to a techno backbeat as Anna Lee is saying, covered with scorpions. So that's going on. You've got Ape, the shape-shifting Morlock that screams like a girl. As Wolverine is slashing at him, he discovers that Ape is a decoy Cyclops there. I liked seeing Plague in this episode. We'd see her again in Come the Apocalypse, but we get to see what she can do as she gives Gambit a fever. But Rogue gets to shine in the episode too. I like how she's throwing the big dude Sunder around quite a bit. This guy takes a licking, but he keeps on ticking. He gets right back up, and he keeps getting hurt in this episode. He just keeps coming. So we get to see Rogue having some fun with this guy in the episode. Let's see here. I like how Anna Lee is ordered to climb back inside Wolverine's head yet again and use his depression against him, because he is reminded that Jean's never going to love him, and he just he's out of the fight. He's out of commission there. The end of the episode with Storm and Callisto doing battle. Interesting scene there. And of course, we get to see Storm being made leader of the Morlocks. And I like how merciful Storm is. She's not going to kill Callisto. She has compassion on this group. And I think she's taking what Professor Xavier said to heart at the beginning of the episode. Mutants need to depend on each other. So she feels like she needs to look in on them. She feels responsible for them. And I think that's why Storm's one of my favorite characters in this series. She decides to, make more potential allies in case Magneto, I'm guessing, tries anything later on. It's probably going through her head as well. And the end of the episode there, where we get to see Wolverine having vanished from his room, that was must have been quite a cliffhanger when it aired the first time. So I think the episode was okay. I think it was all right. I wish there had been a bit more of shadowy goings on in this episode, seeing that dark beast was responsible for these characters in the comics, or we could have gotten, like I said, inklings of Sinister, but not a bad episode overall. I liked Cold Vengeance though quite a bit. I remember seeing this one right after I would see my first episode of X-Men Till Death Do Us Part 2. It was the last day of school before summer vacation, and one of my buddies brought the episode to class on VHS. We didn't have anything to do, of course, so our teacher just let us watch X-Men, among other things. And I remember my friends not knowing what I was talking about when Don Francks started screaming at Wolverine and roaring at him and taunting him as Sabretooth. I remember saying, "That's Anton Arcane from Swamp Thing," because Francks would voice Arcane in Swamp Thing. It was a little 5-episode animated series, one of my favorites when I was a kid. I'd see those episodes from time to time. So Wolverine, he is attempting to go on a sojourn. He's had enough of not really feeling as if he's fitting in, so he's in the Arctic, but he can't find peace there because Sabretooth has decided to follow him. I guess he's still holding a grudge from what happened in Deadly Reunions. This guy has been tracking Wolverine for quite some time, and we get that really interesting fight scene there. Wolverine is not doing so hot there as he falls off the cliff. So Cyclops is overworked, he's stressed, he's yelling at Gambit about spreading unfounded rumors, and Gambit is wanting to check out the Genosha Beach Inn. We saw that in a report in Night of the Sentinels Part 1, and Gambit's wanting to go check this island out because they welcome mutants, and Cyclops is just snapping at Gambit. I like how Professor Xavier shows up, and he gives this little plan of Gambit's to go ahead, and before he hovers away in his chair, he looks at Cyclops and he says, "You need to try to relax a little." And it's a really interesting scene. We get to see Storm, Gambit, and Jubilee going on a little vacation. They're trying to do some research to see whether or not the Genosians are legit. I wanted to call them Geonosians. I've been watching Star Wars for too long, I think. It's Genosians, Bob. So Wolverine is taken in by the Inuit in the Arctic there. And I like how these people don't really understand mutants. Wolverine feels like he can be a normal person here. It's not that they don't understand mutants, they just haven't really seen too many mutants. So he's able to relax, keep his claws in, attempting to have a bit of downtime. And even though Poyeta, the Elder, doesn't really know much about mutants, he does have such a wonderful amount of insight. And he knows how Wolverine is basically a samurai. He is striving so much to have peace in his heart, and he doesn't. No matter what he does, something's always hounding him. In this case, it's Sabretooth. And I like how patient he is with Logan in this episode. He's a really interesting character. I wish we could have seen him again. Of course, you have Kiwat, who is jealous of Logan here. He's the new guy, and he's very popular, and this guy is not having any of it. And of course, Sabretooth is going to use that to his advantage. I like how he just cranks up this guy's fear and jealousy of Wolverine when he finds him later in the episode. So when Gambit, Storm, and Jubilee show up at Genosha, that one receptionist guy, once he sees Storm's little file pop up on his screen, he is so unsettling. He's got that weird soft-spoken voice when he's like, "I've got the perfect rooms for you. Just perfect." I was like, guys, you probably should leave. If someone starts talking to you in that fashion, I would just get out of there. But no, these guys are going to stay and enjoy their vacation at the Genosha Beach. And you know how things go for Wolverine. When things start happening, they happen very fast. And he finds out that Sabretooth is in cahoots with his kid, Kiwat. And there is a fight there at the end of the episode. And Wolverine has just had enough. He comes to the realization that there is no peace for him, even in the Arctic, even with these people that accept him for who he is. He just cannot escape from being hunted by someone. But he doesn't let that stop him from saving this this people. And, the village is destroyed, but he does manage to hold his own against Sabretooth. And even though he does have to go back home, even though he does have to face reality, he does have some new friends. And I like how being called a friend means something to him. And yes, these people do know about mutants now, but they still accept Wolverine for who he is. And maybe in 97, X-Men 97, he might find these people again. I do like a bit of Wolverine Sojourn episodes every now and then. They're pretty fun. You never know what trouble he's going to get into. So the ending of this episode, when things go to hell for Storm and Gambit and Jubilee, that happens quite fast. I like how the gas starts emerging from their room and they got to get out of there. And the folks on hovercraft show up. I hadn't seen Night of the Sentinels yet when I saw this episode for the first time. And boy, the ending was quite a shocker to me, as everyone was captured by the Sentinels. And I remember one of the kids in my class are like, man, this is not a good way to end the episode. You're going to have to go out and buy the next VHS tape. And my teacher was like, yes, you understand how marketing this comic book show to kids works. You got to pay for the next episode to watch it. You got to wait a whole week to watch it next Saturday morning. But I loved this kind of show when I was a kid. You had to watch the next episode to find out what happened. In the 90s, you could not binge watch this show unless you taped it from TV. So I liked how you were left on a cliffhanger there. It was such a great way to end the episode. And I think Cold Vengeance for me gets a 10 out of 10. So next time we're going to be talking about Slave Island as well as The Unstoppable Juggernaut. I think they were two stellar episodes. I think the thing that stood out to me about Cold Vengeance, aside from the awesome ending, was the Inuit. Even though they had no idea what mutants were about, they accepted Logan. They treated him as if he was one of them, and that was such a really fantastic part of the episode when Wolverine meets Poyeta there in the Arctic, and he just accepted him as if he was one of their own. I think that's always stuck with me regarding Wolverine and his sojourns. Anyway, till next time, guys.